Hello and welcome to On Preachy, a podcast of homilies and reflections from St. John Chrysostom Parish. Today, Father Brian Zumbrum reflects on Mark chapter 13, verses 24 to 32, the Gospel reading for Sunday, November 17th, 2024.
So this past week, Salesianum marked the 74th anniversary since our school was desegregated. Having grown up in Pennsylvania, it still seems somewhat surreal that the state that is now my adopted home was part of the Jim Crow South. That the school where I work, the church that I pray in, the restaurants where I eat, they were all segregated. But 74 years ago, on November 14th, 5 black teenagers walked through the doors of Salesianum, starting a chain reaction that would ultimately lead to the Supreme Court's decision in Brown versus the Board of Education, which overturned segregation in schools throughout the country. 5 teenagers in one of the smallest states in the country who dared to see a new possibility in a time and place when that seemed impossible, where the evil that was segregation was taken for granted, a permanent condition that would never change, that the darkness of that present moment was expected to prevail, to last forever, a continuous dark night on our nation's soul. But 5 teenagers chose differently. They chose to hope, and they chose to be the light that they believed would dispel some of that darkness, even when things inevitably got very hard. I guess I found myself looking to those 5 men, those 5 trailblazers, for inspiration as I listened to the readings for this weekend. Because it certainly seems that our present moment is as tumultuous and dark as the bleak descriptions of the end times contained in our readings. War and insurrection rage across the globe. Violence has become a defining characteristic of American life, plaguing our bedrooms and our streets, turning our schools and concert venues and supermarkets into war zones. Our very planet continues to slowly unravel under the constant assault of our endless consumption and plunder. Fires burn, hurricanes churn, drought stalks, crops fail, deserts spread, and waters rise. Division and hatred is stoked by lies and propaganda that we mindlessly consume. Power and wealth continues to accrue to the few as the many are crushed under the heel of profit. The poor and vulnerable continue to still migrate, finding a series of barricaded doors and walls. And racism, sexism, and nativism continue to hold powerful sway in our national discourse. And I must be honest, in times such as these, when the darkness feels so impenetrable, so permanent, one asks oneself, how do we keep doing the work? How do we keep trusting in this promise of a kingdom that never seems to come? A kingdom we're told should be worth living for and working for and dying for. How do we keep defying a world that tells us the opposite of what our faith declares? A faith that tells us we can have peace, a peace rooted in justice, that every human being has the same inherent dignity as a child of God, that enemies can be reconciled, that the stranger can be welcomed, that the least of these will be the greatest, that our lives will be defined by love, the love we allow ourselves to receive, and the love we choose to give. How do we maintain our hope in the dark days? I would like to believe that our answer is contained in these same readings. For at the very end of that first reading, we are told that we must look to the just who shine like the stars, who reveal the face of Christ in who they chose and choose to be. Their light becomes the beacon that holds us on course, even when that course feels so lonely, even when the destination seems like a fairy tale. And so I look to my own just ones. I look to Fred Smith and Thomas and Alfred Connell, Willie Jones and James Owens to discover what my own courage could look like. I look to Bridget and Tiffany Benson, who buried their murdered children, to discover my own capacity for forgiveness. I look to Sister Peggy and the El Salvadoran women that she labored beside during the brutality of the Civil War, and I discover anew my own thirst for justice. I look to Bo, a gentleman who had known homelessness, who shared his tent with me on a cold winter night to discover my own generosity. I gaze upon the tapestry of humanity, and I see so many of these stars that burn so bright. Some are famous, most are nameless, but their light is my reminder that the darkness will never prevail. So let us choose this day, my friends, to be illuminated by the light, by their light, by Christ's light, so that we too can shine, so that we too can hold back the darkness, so that we too can be part of the inbreaking of the kingdom of God. May God be praised.
Unpreachy is a production of St. John Chrysostom Parish in Wallingford, Pennsylvania. Visit us at sjcparish.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. This podcast was produced by Brendan Lorden with music by Skytoes on Upbeat. Thanks for listening. Be well.